let's talk about flowers. Today we're going to be talking about a flower farm. Now there's a lot of ways to get flowers in Minecraft, but the most notable flower that we're going to be talking about today is the pink petal. Now when generating flowers in a biome, they are biome specific. If you are in a pale garden, you will get these really awesome looking eye blossoms. Now the eye blossoms will be different whether it is nighttime or daytime on whether they will be an open eye blossom or a closed eye blossom. If you are in a flower forest, you will get all kinds of flowers. Tulips are one of my favorite things because of the different dyes that you can get. If you are in a savanna, you will get the typical poppy. Now these are the same poppies that you can get from an iron golem, and of course you will get the occasional dandelion. So this has your reds and your yellows as far as dyes are concerned, which you can combine into orange, completely negating the need for a tulip. But one of the most unique flowers in the game is the pink petal. Pink petals only spawn in cherry grove biomes. Now the pink petal is unique because if you bone meal a pink petal, you will reproduce that pink petal and get a ton of them. Now if you are playing in Bedrock, you can actually bone meal flowers directly to cause them to spread, but in Java, pink petal is the only flower that can be reproduced by bone mealing it directly. Alright, now if you are looking for that specific biome, the easiest way to identify it is by the trees. From a distance, if you see a pale oak tree, you are probably looking at a pale garden. If you are looking at a cherry tree, you are probably looking at a cherry grove. Now if you're playing on a public SMP, chances are that you will come across a tree out of place, and that's probably because a player planted it. But if you are searching for a particular flower type, that's the best place to start. If you are looking for a savanna, you're going to be looking for the acacia tree. Now, when you are looking for a common flower like any of the wildflowers, they are available in several different biomes. We're not going to go over each one. We are specifically focused on the unique flowers such as the pink petals. Some other notable biomes are the sunflower plains, which you can see will produce sunflowers. Now when you bone meal the grass in a sunflower plains, you don't actually get sunflowers. When I said earlier that the pink petal is the only flower that you can reproduce, that isn't quite true. Pink petals you can get naturally by bone mealing the grass, and good to note that it will make 96 attempts at spawning a pink petal. Of course, it's competing with the grass as well. So when you are bone mealing, you are going to have a 13 by 13 block space, and you're going to get pink petals most of the time with every bone meal. For a flower like the sunflower, you actually have to craft it down into seeds and plant it like any other farmable item and wait for it to grow. But if you were to bone meal the sunflower directly, you will see that the sunflower will also reproduce itself. Bone mealing the grass in a sunflower plain is going to give you several different variants of the wildflowers. So you're going to be looking at your cornflower, your azure bluets, your oxy daisies, dandelions, and poppies. If you are looking for another unique flower, you can always go to a swamp and get the blue orchid. The blue orchid is only found in the swamp biome, and you can bone meal the grass to obtain it. Most of the times when you're looking for flowers, you are looking for it for the dye. The best place to find flowers with variations in color is the flower forest. Now, unlike other biomes where the pattern is seamlessly random, the flower forest will always spawn in a particular pattern. Now this is seed specific, meaning that your pattern is not going to look like this one. Unless, of course, you have this seed. If you have found a flower forest and you are specifically looking for a red dye, if you were to build your farm directly above a patch of red tulips, you will only ever get red tulips. If you are looking for an orange dye, build your farm above the orange tulips, and you will only get orange tulips. Now, it is a bit of trial and error. You do need to bone meal the surrounding area to see what patch you're currently in, but once you identify it, it will stay the same regardless of how many times you bone meal. Alright, let's briefly talk about how to obtain some of these flowers in your survival world. Again, you can always bone meal the grass, but if you are looking for decoration such as the pink petal, you can actually make a quick little farm utilizing hopper minecarts or mud. Now, when you bone meal grass, you can spread pink petals if you are in a cherry grove biome, but as you can see, you can place pink petals on any of the earth type blocks. So that's going to be dirt, that's going to be coarse dirt, that's going to be moss blocks. They just won't spread naturally if you were to bone meal. A quick and easy setup in your survival world is to build 2 columns, 3 blocks on either side, a hopper facing into a chest. On top of your hopper, you would have any earth style block with a hopper minecart clipped into the center. The hopper minecart will pull the items produced and it will feed it into the hopper below. In your survival world, you could simply set up an observer clock, which as you could see will produce a ton of pink petals. Now, if you are playing in a server like DonutSMP, you are going to have to slow down that clock quite a bit. Instead of placing an observer, you could just place a solid block. You can build a 5 redstone tick clock using a comparator in subtract mode. It is quite a bit slower, but it will not burn out in a survival world. And since mud is not a full block, you don't need to clip the hopper minecart into that earth block. If you are trying to create these pink petals faster, you can always use a different method to double pulse. Now, double pulsing is taking a 5-tick clock and ticking it twice per rotation. Before we do that, I will show you quickly how to clip an item or a hopper minecart into a block. If we just grab ourselves a grass block, next to your earth block, you're going to build a little 3-block staircase like so. Place a rail next to your earth block, place another rail elevated up to give it a slant, put a hopper minecart on top and give it a little nudge. The hopper minecart will clip through that grass block. In this case, it could be again moss block or any other earth block. Remove the rails, add yourself a block next to the hopper minecart and block, build it up to keep all those items contained, and then we will cap it off with glass. On the back side, I will give you a moment to take a look, but we are double pulsing this dispenser with the same 5-tick redstone clock, and you'll see when I turn it on, it dispenses twice as fast. Now, as mentioned previously, pink petals are not the only flower that you can reproduce by bone mealing. You can use sunflowers. If you wanted to produce a ton of sunflowers, all you have to do is replace that pink petal with a sunflower, and then of course a sunflower is going to be 2 blocks tall, so you'll need to make sure that your blocks are going to prevent the extra items from popping out. Turn your farm on, and you'll see very quickly that we are duplicating the sunflowers. Now, a couple quick things to note before we move on to our mega farm. If you are building this in bedrock, you can't use a glass block here. You would actually need to place a solid block just because I am in Java. The airspace above the dispenser is being powered, and so the dispenser is getting a block update and it will fire it with quasi connectivity. So if you are using bedrock, simply adding a glass block like I have will not work. But if you are building this in survival, or you are just wanting some extra decoration, this is all you really need. You don't need to do anything else. All right, now the build border or the perimeter for your build is going to be a 34 long by 21 block wide area. The entire farm will fit directly inside of that build area, and the most important part is it has to be in a cherry grove. You will know that you're in a cherry grove if you bone meal the grass and you see pink petals. If you bone meal the grass and you do not see pink petals, you know that you are not in a cherry grove. If you are on Java, the easiest way to tell is by simply pressing F3 on your keyboard and looking for the cherry grove biome. As soon as you leave that cherry grove biome, you will notice that the biome does change. Now, even though this biome is a cherry grove, sometimes the biomes do cross to the point where this cherry tree is extended over to the savanna. Now, these typically don't spawn naturally next to each other, but in the example, you can tell that the last block of this tree is not in a cherry grove. So if you were to build your farm where it does span across, you will not get pink petals and you will probably clog your collection system. Another thing to note when identifying your cherry grove is the Y coordinate. Now, directly under cherry groves is typically a cave, and the cave typically starts 15 or 20 blocks below the surface. Sometimes you can get really deep cherry groves, and sometimes you can get really shallow cherry groves. So if you are hiding your base, dig down as deep as you can, as far down as you can go, and always double check your biome. Once you have identified your biome, you are going to mark out your 34 by 21 area. Now, you will notice that I have 3 blocks that are extending beyond our grass, and that is because the farm can have the clock outside of the biome if, for whatever reason, you can't find one large enough, but not all of it has to be contained inside of the biome, and we will cover more on that later. All right, now the first thing we are going to do is actually build our clock. You are going to find the center of your build area, which is going to be 10 blocks in. So we are going to count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and on the 10th block, we are going to count 1 block forward, and on the second block, we are going to place any solid block of choice. This does need to be a solid block. You are going to place a piece of redstone dust, and you're going to place another solid block. On the inside of your farm, towards your cherry grove, you are going to place a redstone torch, and then we are going to place a repeater, grab a repeater, on top of the second solid block, and we are going to place it on a 4-tick. Up to the front, and since there is nothing touching this redstone dust, if I were to click on it, it will just change the state. So you can either crouch and click, or you can crouch and click into the front of the repeater, whatever is easiest, and place a solid block directly in front of your 4-tick repeater. Now, because this is going to be a clock, we do want to go ahead and preemptively grab a lever, and you're going to want to place the lever on the left side if you're looking at your build border. So Colin, if you could go ahead and place a lever, and make sure that you flip it on. You will know that the lever is on if it is facing down, but more importantly, if the redstone torch is off. Now that we have our clock, we're going to go ahead and complete it. Now that we have turned it off, rather, we're going to place a note block directly on top of that redstone torch, and that is going to be your clock. Colin, if you actually want to flip that lever, we can just confirm that the clock is working. And indeed it is. All right, go ahead and turn that off. Now we're going to build the base of our farm out first, and then we're going to come back to the bottom for the redstone wiring. I find it easier to build the base simply because the farm is going to require a lot of grass blocks, and it's just easier to see where to place them. So we are going to grab our blocks once again. We are going to build a little rectangle. I say little, it's going to go the entire distance of this build area. And we're going to start directly in front of our note block. And we're just going to build a straight line of blocks. These do not have to be solid blocks, but we're going to build a straight line of blocks all the way until we get to the end with a 2-block gap. We are going to turn and go 2 blocks over, and we're going to do the same thing all the way back. Alright, that is going to be the base of our build. The next thing we are going to want to do is we are going to place an observer, and we're actually going to place a couple of observers. The first one is going to be facing away from your note block towards your solid blocks. So crouch or just look into that block in front of you. And we're also going to place one facing straight up, or the redstone output face up, and the face looking at the note block. Now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to attach a bunch of pistons, and we are going to need a lot of grass blocks. So grab yourself some pistons, and we are going to count out 7 blocks from our observer in both directions. So Colin, if you can do that side, I will do this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Alright, we are going to also add a block in front of our observer, and then we are going to grab our grass blocks. Now to obtain grass blocks, you can either purchase them from auction if you are playing in a multiplayer survival world like DonutSMP. If you are obtaining this on your own, you do need Silk Touch on any tool, or you can get 1 grass block and then a bunch of dirt and let it spread naturally. Just remember that you do need a light source for grass to spread. We are going to place down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 grass blocks. And then we are just going to fill in the entire area until we have a 10 by 7 grass platform. You'll see why I said 9 later. Alright, now that you have your 2 grass platforms, just like in our example, we are going to build 2 side by side. And to go ahead and do that, we are going to place a solid block directly in between our 2 grass platforms, 1 block ahead, and we're going to build it 2 blocks high. And we are going to place down our 2 note blocks. This is going to be part of our redstone system. And then we are going to follow it up with 2 observers with the redstone output facing up. So if you're on your platform, you will do everything from up top and your observers will be oriented correctly. Now you can either do this from below the farm or on top of the grass blocks like I am doing. And we are going to extend pistons all the way to the other side, making sure that there is a 1 block gap between the grass platform and the pistons. We are going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Go ahead and hop down and place pistons facing in the opposite direction. It should look like this. And then do the same thing with the grass blocks. We are going to build a 7 by 10 platform. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And go ahead and fill it all the way in. Alright, now we are going to do the same thing that we did on the first farm. We are going to build up 2 blocks in between the grass platforms, 1 block ahead. This time we are not going to extend it any further. We are going to place a note block and a single observer this time instead of 2. And we are going to finish off this side with pistons. Alright. We are going to go ahead and add 2 blocks on this observer as well. All of our items will drop in between the 2 platforms, and that just helps keep it all in line. And I just noticed I did not do that over here, so let me fix that real quick. There we go. In between the 2 grass platforms, we are going to have a pillar that will extend all the way up, and we're just going to use solid blocks. All right, now go to the outside of your farm on both sides, and we are going to extend a wall right on the opposite side of your grass blocks. So go ahead and place any block of choice all the way down, and make sure that you fill that gap. You can skip those two pistons, those can be exposed, and we're going to do the same thing on the second farm, making sure that we fill that one block gap. We are going to do the same thing on both sides, so make sure that you have the farms completely mirroring each other, just like that. And then we are going to hop down to the bottom. Now, typically when we place down a farm like this, we are going to place a bunch of redstone underneath it, which we are still going to do, but we are going to do something slightly different. This time, we are going to find our second piston on both farms. So, second piston from the outside, and we are going to place a piston directly underneath, just like that. You're going to do this on both sides. And then we are going to add 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to, on the inside of your farm, looking away, place an observer. You are going to place a solid block, and then we're going to place an observer, and then we are going to match up the grass blocks with any block of choice. It just can't be a redstone block until we get to that one block gap, and then we are going to place a piston just like that. Now we will talk about this more in a second, but let's just make sure that it looks the same on the opposite side. Piston off of the second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Observer, solid block, observer. 1, 2, 3. Now this is going to be slightly different for the second set of farms. If you add 3 farms in a row, you would duplicate the second farm twice. You would not duplicate the first farm. So everything beyond this point is going to match this second farm if you chose to extend this. On the second farm, we are going to go right up against the piston on the second one of our platform. This time, however, we're only going to place 2 solid blocks. Then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to place an observer, block, observer. And then we are going to do the same thing. We're going to take the blocks all the way to the opposite end, finishing it off with a piston, leaving that one block gap. Now the reason we are doing this, we want to double pulse our dispenser. Our dispenser is going to fit in between the shifting floor dead center. Because we are putting the dispenser dead center, the timing would be really off if you tried to do observers all the way across like we typically do. And the unique thing about observers, when you first push an observer, they don't immediately fire. So in DonutSMP, where there is a redstone clock limit, this is not going to break that redstone clock limit because it's only going to fire when it is returning to its starting position. So the first position being pushed, it is not going to fire. When it returns, it will fire. So it will stay well within that 5 redstone tick limit. All right. Now don't get your farms mixed up at this point. We want to make sure that we are on the side with the clock. We are going to go to our the back side of our observers, and we are going to place a solid block right in between. And then it's a little tricky. You could put a solid block or put any block down, but we're gonna build this up, so I'm gonna show you how I do it. I walk right up to the block, and then I move over to where I can see this corner. I look at the corner, and then I place a dispenser, which will make sure that it is facing straight up. And the reason you want to The reason you want to do that is because we are going to be bone milling the grass from underneath the farm. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to place, or we're going to leave a gap, and we're going to place a note block to the left of your observer, and then we are going to grab one observer looking at the note block, a second observer looking at the first one, and then a third observer. Once you have done that, place a solid block in between the dispenser and that third observer, and now you have your double pulse. Let me just hop down here. So this actually, let's be a little cheaty so I can show you a little easier. As the farm is shifting back and forth, it is going to be moving the observer. The first observer will fire on the return, which will power the solid block. The second observer will fire and power the note block on the return, and then the note block will add a 3-tick delay, and it will fire the dispenser the second time. So each time the floor shifts back and forth, you will get a pulse, so you are kind of getting 2 farms in one, and that's why I said 9x7, because the flowers are going to be spawning in a 9x7 area, and we are adding that 10th block so that there is still a 9x7 regardless of which side it's being pushed from. Alright, let's go look at the other side. It is a mirror image. We are going to place a solid block in between the 2 observers. You are going to place your dispenser off of the solid block, and then you're going to do a note block, observer, 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 solid block. And your farm, your redstone for your farm is actually complete. It's one of the easier shifting floor redstone designs. All right. Now, because the observers are in a different position on the each subsequent farm, we are going to do the exact same thing. We are going to add a solid block and then a note block, but this time it's going to be reversed. This time we're going to place the note block in between the 2 observers. We are going to run 3 observers off of that note block. We're going to do a solid block. We are going to do a solid block to the left of the observer, opposite of the note block. And then in this corner, same thing, go right up to your block, scooch over to where you're looking at the bottom corner, and place your dispenser, keeping in mind that it does need to be facing up. So if we pop up there, the dispenser is looking up. Alrighty, hopefully this will be an easier angle. Colin is going to place a note block in between the 2 observers. He is going to wrap 3 observers around that note block. On the end of that third observer, he's going to place a solid block. And to the right of the observer, he's going to place a solid block. And then he's going to place the dispenser in the corner. Alright, that is all the redstone for all 4 farms. Now at this point, we are going to wire up the bottom line to fire the pistons back and forth. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and place my hoppers. And the reason I'm going to do that is as we build each layer, I'm going to build it in the exact same way. So on the outside of your farm, we're going to place a hopper line going right into the dispenser. Now, the reason we did the redstone a little differently between the 2 farms is because the hoppers, if we had it identical, the hoppers would go to the inside. If you extend out a 3rd platform, you have to get a little fancy and run a lot more hoppers. That's why we opt to do 2, but just know you can extend it. And then we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side, running hoppers from the dispenser all the way 1 block away from your pistons. Now let's wire it up. You are going to need some redstone dust coming off the back of your observer. We are going to run redstone dust along this back wall. Again, it's off of the observer. It is not going to be on the side with the note block. You are going to run this all the way until you get to the gap, and then you're going to extend it one more. All right, once you have your redstone line, one redstone dust past the gap under our pistons, we're going to actually hop in here. We're going to turn, crouch, and place an observer where the face is looking at the redstone dust and the observer is powering the note block. Just like that. Once you have added that observer, your first farm is actually going to be ready to shift back and forth. To extend this signal to the opposite side, we're actually going to add 2 observers and then redstone dust all the way to the end. And this one's a little easier to do. We will grab an observer, face it towards that redstone dust, and that is going to be powering the note block. All right, now let's turn our attention to the top of the farm once again. We are going to extend each observer up 1 block. So we're going to grab another observer and face it down on all 4 observers. And next to each observer, we're just going to build up that column by 1 block. And then in between the column, we are going to add some walls. So Colin, if you could go ahead and grab some walls. Right, and just like that, we are going to connect the 2 columns together. Now we're actually going to extend this up 1 more block, but let's go ahead and get our outline first before we continue. We are going to run solid blocks on top of your pistons. So from your observers all the way to the outermost piston, we're going to run solid blocks. We are going to do the same thing on the center pistons and the outer pistons, running a line of solid blocks all the way. All right, now that we have solid blocks on all of our pistons, we're going to build a little ledge all the way around this outermost platform next to our grass block shifting floor. We're going to start on the corner and we're going to go out 1 block. We are going to extend this all the way to the other side. And just like the first side, we're going to start at the corner, or I guess stop at the corner in this case. We're going to do this on all 4 sides. Once you have added that ledge on all of the outsides, your farm should look like this. We're not quite done with our solid blocks on this layer yet. On the corners, we are going to make this outside block a 3x3 platform. So in the corner, we are going to build this over 2 blocks to make this 1, 2, 3. From the corner block, we're going to build back 2, and then we're going to fill it in. So you should end up with a 3-block platform that extends over the corner. We're going to do this on all 4 sides, making sure that your platform is extending out away from your farm, and it will be 2 blocks in total. So I guess you could think of it as a 2x3 platform, just filling in the gap here. And your farm should look like this. The next step is to grab a bunch of trapdoors. Now, because this farm is designed for DonutSMP, we can't really use dispensers, as we have found out from our fungus farm, because the dispensers are known to get out of sync, and when that happens, your farm will break. So we're going to use trapdoors. Now, a trapdoor, when you place it down, will open away from you. So you do need to build up this wall first. I guess you don't have to, you could stand up here and jump, but hop up on the wall and place a trapdoor all the way along the solid blocks next to your grass platform. And we're going to do this on all 4 sides. Alright, now before we add the redstone to make the floors shift, we're going to build up that center wall one more time. So we're going to add note blocks on top of our observers. And once you add your note blocks, we are going to build up that column once again. So instead of next to the observers, we're going to be next to the note blocks this time. And then Colin is going to connect just the second layer with walls once again. And that'll keep the items from falling and landing on the wall. Now the easiest part of this is going to be your center pistons. You are going to place redstone dust on top of each and every block, just like this. And you're going to do the same thing on both sides. So whenever those observers power the note blocks will power the redstone dust. We are going to do the same thing on the outer walls, but we are only going to go over the pistons. And we're going to do this on all 4 sides. Now, to control the trapdoors, we had a few different options, but what we went with is the option to let the farm continue shifting while the water is released to flush the items, which means that the farm is not going to be able to activate the trapdoors and turn off the pistons at the same time. So what we are going to do is we are going to utilize the locking feature of repeaters. So grab yourself some repeaters, and you could do this all at once instead of preemptively placing it like we did. On the outside wall, you are going to go again just to where you are on top of the last piston. Facing away from the farm, you're going to place a repeater on a 2-tick, and that is facing away widthwise. Now facing away lengthwise, we are going to place a repeater on a 1-tick, so it should be facing this corner. Place a solid block in front of your repeater. Turn, place another repeater also on a 2-tick. Place a solid block in front of that repeater. Turn, place another repeater on a 2-tick, and then we are going to place a repeater on a 4-tick. Whenever the farm is active, the repeater will lock the repeater on a 4-tick, keeping it from powering the trapdoors. As soon as the farm turns off, this repeater will hold a signal long enough to activate the trapdoors, and then when the farm continues shifting, it will return to the state of locking the repeater, which we'll demonstrate here in a moment. Once you have built your clock, we are going to place redstone dust along this wall directly above your trapdoors, and then you can stop once you get to the final trapdoor. The opposite side is identical, it is just mirrored. So 2 ticks towards the width side of the farm, 1 tick, solid block, 2 tick, solid block, 2 tick, and then followed up with a 4-tick repeater. Redstone dust all the way across. And we do the same thing on these 2 farms. Placing down a repeater on a 2-tick, 1 tick, solid block, 2 ticks, solid block, 2 ticks, and 4 ticks. Alright, now that is the most complicated part of this entire build, and it really isn't that bad once you get an idea of how it works. Now we are ready to test our build before we continue building up. So let's go ahead, Colin, if you wouldn't mind flipping it on. We will just make sure that everything is working. And it is working exactly like we expect. As the farm is constantly pulsing, it is keeping the trapdoors locked open. And as soon as the farm shuts off, it will release it. Alright, we are just about ready to add the water for our item flushing system. Before we do that, we want to make sure that we protect our redstone, and we want to make sure that the items stay inside the farm when we have it on. So what we are going to do is we are going to place a row of glass on top of the gap where the pistons are, and we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Now this does need to be a transparent block. If you put a solid block here, that will kill the grass and it will convert to dirt, and dirt cannot spawn pink petals. So go ahead and do this on all 4 farms and on both sides. Just like that. Now, alternatively to water buckets, you could place ice along the wall and break it, and then place your trapdoors. That way you don't have to carry a bunch of water buckets. But for our purposes for this tutorial, we are going to use water buckets. Now, if you are using water buckets, you do not have to waterlog each and every trapdoor like I just did. You can skip a block. When you skip a block, it will convert the center trapdoor into a water source. So just skip every other block, and you will not only use less water buckets, but have a completely waterlogged trapdoor system. And again, do this for all 4 farms. If we wanted to test to make sure that was working, go ahead, Colin, and turn the farm back on. And just like that, that is the functionality of the farm. And we are ready to move on to the second and the third layer. Now, it is really easy to identify the pattern once you have built the second layer. The pattern is going to be observer, observer, note block, note block. Now, if this is your top farm, you don't need to add the second note block. But you will continue this pattern as high up as you want or are able to go. And you will do this for all of your note blocks and all of your observers throughout the entire farm. So note block, observer, observer. Alright, now in just like the first layer, we are going to carry up this column all the way up. So wherever there is an observer and a note block, you'll just add a block to the side. And just like the first layer, we are going to add 7 pistons all the way across off of the observer. This time it's going to be above the second note block, and that's because we're using the bottom note block to transmit the signal. So the second note block is the same as the first note block on layer 1. So go ahead and grab your pistons and run them 7 across. Grab your grass blocks and build your 7 by 10 platform. Once you have your grass platforms built out, we are going to add pistons on the opposite side off of the observer. And just like layer 1, we are going to place pistons opposite and build our 7 by 10 platform. Once you have your second platform built out, do the same step one more time on the back side of your farm, adding 7 pistons across. And just like on the first layer, we are going to add a wall on the side of our grass platform, and that is going to be where our water sits. Make sure that you extend all the way, filling the gap next to the piston. And you're going to do this on both sides, on all 4 farms. All right, let's continue building up. We will worry about the redstone underneath it here in a moment. Let's go ahead and finish it up since we are on top of our farm currently. All right. Now, if you are having trouble following along on this layer, it is identical to the first layer, so anything that you did on layer 1, you are going to repeat on layer 2, including adding our 2 blocks with our walls. Now, you want to make sure that you do not put walls between the grass platforms, or the items will not fall through. Alright, continuing with the redstone on layer 2, we are going to grab our solid blocks once again, and we are going to just mimic what we have below, building out that 3x3 platform, which will overhang by 2 blocks. And then we can add redstone all along the blocks directly over our pistons. Alright, I am going to explain this next part once again because it is easy to mess up, but it is identical to the first layer, so I'm going to go a little quicker. We're going to place a repeater on a 2 tick, 1 tick, solid block, 2 ticks, solid block, 2 ticks, and then 4 ticks. And then run redstone dust all the way along that back wall. Do the same thing on the remaining 3 corners. 2 ticks, 1 tick, solid block, 2 ticks, solid block, 2 ticks, 4 ticks, and redstone dust all the way along. Alright, go ahead and grab your glass blocks. We are going to cover the gap above the pistons and prevent the items from flowing when the gap is opened up when the floor is shifting. We're going to add these glass blocks on all 4 farms. Grab your ice, your trapdoors, or your water bucket and place them down just like we did on layer 1. Alright, now the top, or the second layer, we are going to build a 3rd layer, but our second layer is done. We've actually already started the 3rd layer, just so I could show you the pattern. Again, that pattern is 2 observers, 2 note blocks, 2 observers, 2 note blocks all the way up. If you are on your top layer, it is just a single note block, and actually that could be a solid block, but we're not going to get into that. We are ready to add our shifting clock. I'm not sure what else to call it. Now, I am going to walk you through this part step by step because just like the shutoff system, it is the most complicating part and the easiest to mess up. The farm closest to your clock is going to have 4 solid blocks, an observer, solid block, observer, followed by 3 solid blocks. The farms furthest away, again, so we can have the hoppers exit the outside, is going to be slightly different with 2 solid blocks, observer, solid block, observer, 5 solid blocks, making sure that there is a gap in line with your shifting floor. So let's go ahead and do that. We are going to place the first piston on the second to last piston. Now, if you're like me and you hate building and moving water, we can actually activate our shutoff by placing a couple temporary redstone torches. And when you do that, we are going to place our 4 solid blocks, observer, solid block, observer, and then 3 solid blocks. Finish it off with another piston, making sure that you do leave that gap. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing over here, except with our furthest farm pattern, which is 2 solid blocks, observer, solid block, observer, and then 5. making sure that you leave that gap. Now, this is the exact same pattern as the one below, so if you were able to follow along on that one, it is identical. You are going to place a solid block directly in the middle of our two observers, and that is where our dispenser is going to rest. So it's a little bit more challenging on the second layer, because the first layer we were pretty close and you just walked up, but you can hop up and aim towards the corner. Just make sure that the dispenser is facing up and not facing out. Once you have your solid block and dispenser furthest away from our clock, we are going to place a note block next to our observer, and then wrap 3 observers around it, making sure that they are all looking into each other, finishing it off with a solid block. Now you're going to do the exact same thing on the farms furthest from our clock, but we are going to shift over. So instead of placing the solid block in between the observers, we're going to place it on the left side of the second observer and put our note block in between the 2 observers. We are going to place 1, 2, 3 observers with a solid block. Again, the reason we swapped it up is so that the dispenser can have hoppers running to it from the outside of your farm. Place your dispenser in the corner. Again, you can jump up. If you're having trouble placing the dispenser, you can either place a temporary block from beneath the farm. Just be sure you don't kill your grass. Or you could actually do it from your second layer, which is, I think, what we did in survival when we built this. All right, that is your dispensing system. Now, this is a mirror image, and Colin has already set his up, so we are good to go. Now, if you placed torches down, be sure to remove them, or your farm will not work. All right, Colin, if you wouldn't mind turning the farm on so we can just double check everything. And there you have it. Now, I know what you're thinking, but CD3 Daddy, how are we going to collect this if it is staying locked open? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we're going to go ahead and do that now. You could do that at the beginning of the build or when you are done building all of your layers, but we're going to go ahead and hop down, and we are going to build out the same dropper counter that we have done in previous videos. Now, to activate the dropper, we are going to go off of the solid block directly under the repeater, place down a dropper, place a hopper into the dropper, and then you're going to need a target block, which will go next to your hopper. Now, on the inside of your farm, you are going to need to do this before you place down your target block, or you're going to have to walk all the way around. We are going to place, there we go, 1 comparator in front of the dropper and 1 in front of the hopper. You are going to place 2 solid blocks in front of your comparators. On the comparator in front of your dropper, the one that's reading the dropper, we are going to place a redstone torch, and then we are going to run, we're going to place a redstone torch off to the side of that block, and then we're going to run redstone dust connecting the 2 torches together. From that redstone torch, we are going to place more redstone dust, and now we're going to place our target block. Your dropper is actually completely built out. Open up your dropper. And you're going to place 16 items inside of it. Now, they do need to be stackable. You can use any stackable item. They just can't be a non-stackable item like a sword or a shulker box, because then you could only have 9. So place 16 items anywhere in your dropper, and you'll notice in the background that the torch is changing because that comparator is now receiving an input, or it's detecting a signal strength, and that redstone torch is receiving an input, which toggles it off, which then allows this to turn on, which will connect to the target block, which will lock your hopper. Now that is the counter. To connect it to our clock, we are going to place a redstone torch on your target block facing away from your farm. You're going to place a piece of redstone dust in front of your redstone torch, and then you're going to run 2 pieces of redstone dust all the way to your build border. Now, off of the solid block, we are going to place a comparator that will be reading the output of the redstone dust. You're going to turn and you're going to face the opposite direction, powering the redstone dust, and last but not least, redstone dust in front of your clock. Now what that is going to do, whenever this redstone torch turns on, the hopper will add the items back to the dropper, and the counting sequence will start all over again. But the comparators will slowly tick down 30 ticks until it no longer is detecting a signal. So Colin, if you wouldn't mind turning it on, we will just watch that play out. As it gets to the 16th item, you will notice that the redstone torch turns on, and the clock slowly ticks down, which will allow the items to be flushed from your system. So watching it from above, it will look something like this. So every 16 cycles, all of your items will be flushed down into your collection system. Alright, your farm is completely operational. If you wanted to build a 3rd layer, you are going to build it exactly 100% identical to the 2nd layer. I can't stress that enough. I don't want to waste your time watching us build it out, so we will get back to you in a moment. Alright, we went ahead and built out the 3rd layer. Now, to add bone meal to all of your farms, there's a bunch of different ways of doing it. The main one, if you're wanting to maximize bone meal storage, you can add a chest in between the hoppers. Keep in mind that you do have to have a hopper to pull from the angled hopper. So this cannot be a chest, so you can't just stagger it directly. You do have to have a hopper. And then you have to have another hopper to push into the chest. So if you wanted to maximize bone meal storage, you could do it this way. You could even expand the chest. Just keep in mind that to fill up the 2nd layer and the 3rd layer, each chest does have to be completely full. Now, if you are wanting to conserve bone meal and you want to craft the bone meal, we are not going to cover that in this video. But you can save storage space by adding decorated pots in place of the chests. A decorated pot has an inventory of only 1 slot, but the same thing is true. The bottom farm has to be completely filled, including the decorated pot, before reaching the 2nd farm, and the 2nd farm has to be filled before reaching the 3rd farm. So if your farms are not running at full capacity, just keep in mind you do have to fill it up quite a bit. And last but not least, at least in this example, is just doing a straight row of hoppers. That is a tried and true, easy to implement method, and that's probably the one that we use the most. Alright, the last thing that we need to discuss, your farm is fully operational. Fill it up with bone meal and you will be generating pink petals galore. However, where are those pink petals going? Well, right now, if we were to hop down and look, you'll see that the gap is directly above the wall next to this trough. Now, the reason we have separated this out by 2 blocks is so the redstone dust does not interfere with our collection system. So what I am going to do, from observer to observer, I'm going to, and this could be any block of choice, I'm going to completely protect my redstone dust, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. You don't have to go all the way this far in, but I'm going to go ahead and place it on that note block and just carry this all the way down. Now from this side, you'll see that all of the items will fall into this little trough that we are creating, and you are going to have 2 of them. The easiest thing to do, and we are going to let you design this because it really is dependent on how big you build this, how many modules you build, but what we typically do is in the corners, we're going to add a water bucket on both sides. And then we're going to place a block off of your redstone torch. And you're going to place a block opposite until you reach a center point. Where all the... Oh, and I went too far actually. There we go. A center point where the water is equidistant from both sides. And then it will flow freely. You can then turn it towards the opposite side of your farm. And you'll use packed ice, fence gates. We have done several different tutorials on water manipulation, but you would do the same thing on both sides. Again, this is completely up to you. I'm going to be sending this away from my Switch, so I'm going to be covering up these note blocks. This will be in the schematic that we will be posting on our Discord, so go ahead and hop on over and join if you have not already. But we're just going to make sure that this water stream goes all the way until it reaches the second farm. And then from there, you can take your water stream to your storage system wherever you have built it.
Alright, that about wraps it up for this video. If you do need any help with your farms or just have a question, you can join our Discord and open a ticket, and one of our mods will help you. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell, and we'll see you in the next one. And as always, we wanted to give a special thanks to all of our supporter VIPs.